Here are 3 things that every leader should know how to do at the start of every week, especially when you have new hires.
If you want to raise the bar on your growth, whether it's personal or professional, this is the podcast for you. And now, the host, Juan Alvarado.
My name is Juan Alvarado, and this is the Relevant Development Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Number 1 is we have to teach change. There's a lot of leaders and employees out there that don't like change. Change is inevitable. John Maxwell once taught me that you have to unlearn, learn, and relearn your position and your job responsibilities every 3 to 5 years. You're like, that is way too much. How is that even possible? Think about this. In 2018, 2019, you were rolling. You had a nice position. You've been there for a while. And then all of a sudden, COVID happened. You had to, in the midst of COVID, and even after that whole debacle, you had to figure out how to do your job from home. And then in 2021, 2022, you went back to the office and things were a little bit different. And that happened within a couple years. And you guys expanded, or then you guys condensed down. And now you had different responsibilities. Either something came off of your plate to somebody new that was hired, or they collapsed that position and you got more responsibilities. You had to unlearn and learn your position just a little bit differently. That happens maybe once in a blue moon. But how about when you have a new boss, your boss retires, or there's upward movement with other people and you get a new position? Or you stay in your position and there's upward movement and now you have a new boss. Things might change every 3 to 5 years. So if we can have this conversation with our staff from the get-go, hey, nothing's changing. I just want you guys to understand that every 3 to 5 years, it is very likely and very possible that there will be change. Whether it's people leaving or coming in, it doesn't matter. Things might change. So we start having that conversation ahead of time. And so how do we get better? My suggestion is that we start to cross-train, cross-level training with those people to the left and right of us. I know my job and 1 or 2 things of the next person's job. And that person knows a little bit of my job. So this helps when I am missing from work and I've taken a vacation day or sick day and something needs to get done, somebody else knows how to do my position, or I know how to fill in for somebody else's position. And leadership and leaders, listen to me closely. Don't get freaked out if somebody knows how to do your job. It is very good for somebody to know your job. Don't be threatened by somebody that is moving up, who's getting better. You should be teaching somebody who is going to be your successor. That should be all of our goals. Teaching up a staff or all of our staff for 1 day for them to take your spot when it's time for you to either move up or move out. I think that's a great thing to say, my staff took my position, not somebody from the outside, not somebody from a different department, my staff. Why? Because that shows of how great of a leader you are. So start to have these constant conversations every week, like, how can we add something today? How can we change something today so we can have our staff ready for change? Number 2, show up. Not just show up for work, but show up mentally, show up emotionally for your staff. I have a keynote that I talk about the different hats that we wear. We all have different hats. And hats, HAT, stands for how do I handle what I hear? How do I give the right attention with the right attitude? And how do I transform the temperature? This is how we intentionally show up. So I'm not necessarily a boss or director or manager when somebody has an issue or a complaint. I am now listener. I'm not here to direct. I'm not here to necessarily manage and tell people what to do. Right now, I'm here to sit back and listen intently. Or if I'm writing up a staff and there's a serious conversation that needs to happen, I need to watch, how do I transform the temperature, handle my tone? How do I give the right attention? How do you feel right now? What's going through your head? What was happening when this took place yesterday? Whatever it is, how do I, H, handle what I hear? A, give the right attention with the right attitude. And T, how do I transform the temperature? We have to wear the right hats, and that's how we show up. Especially when it comes to discipline and problems and issues. Hey, it's you, it's me, and we're facing forward, right? We're facing the problem. The problem is in front of us, and it's you and me together on the same team looking at the problem. Too many times it's this person versus this person, and this is the problem. She's the problem. No, it's the disrespect is the problem. It is the coming in late. So it's the situation that is the problem, not necessarily the person. So how can we get on the same side and face the problem and attack the problem together? And that's how we show up. Number 3, in those conversations that we were just talking about, how do I learn a new language? And what I mean by that is, we understand from our standpoint, maybe the elevation that we are in our position, but then we have a staff that's at a different position, a different viewpoint. And so what I mean by this is they might have a hurt, they might have an issue, maybe they have a really good idea, but you don't see it and you don't understand it. It is like somebody speaking a foreign language to me. I don't understand what they're saying. And so we have to understand this person and what they're communicating, how they're communicating. How do we do this? I like to tell people that we all have a subtitle under what we're saying. So when we're talking to a staff and they're frustrated, what is that subtitle for that staff? What language are they speaking? And how do we understand their subtitle? How do I say, can you explain a little bit more? Tell me a little bit more about that. We used to do this in the military and in the police department. We'd ask a question, they'd give us a little tip or information, and we say, oh, that's interesting. Why don't you talk to me a little bit more about that? Explain that again. What do you mean you said X? Talk about that real quick. How does that make you feel? And so all of a sudden the person starts to elaborate and explain maybe in more detail, and it gets a better understanding. So I have to understand the language that they're speaking. Are you speaking out of hurt? Are you speaking out of being stressed? Are you speaking out of excitement? Are you passionate? We have to understand that we're communicating with somebody that is speaking a different or foreign language. Yes, we might understand the English that they're speaking to us, but there's always this undertone, this subtitle, if you will, that we need to understand. So 3 things that I want you to concentrate this week as a good, conscious, intentional leader is to show up mentally, physically, emotionally, right? IQ, EQ, that way, right? I want you to start teaching how do we handle change when it happens. Just have these little conversations. What changed today? What can we make better? Here's my biggest pet peeve, I'll add to this real quick, is this is how we've always done it. God, that sentence drives me crazy. No, stop it. If we kept that's how we've always done it, then we'd be still driving a horse and buggy. Because it works. Why change it? We're fine. We're good. We wouldn't have Model T cars. That's how we've always done it. But somebody challenged the engine. Somebody challenged the wheel. How wide, how thin, how big, how tall, the drive shaft, everything in a vehicle. And we have the vehicles that we have today. And somebody challenged it again and we have electric cars. Like, just because that's how we've always done it is not always the answer. So sometimes we need to challenge that. And there's change, and change can be good. So let's have this conversation with our staff that yes, it might feel uncomfortable now, kind of like working out, but it's going to make us stronger later. And then we show up with the heart of empathy and we say, hey, I understand that change is a little bit difficult for you. Let's process through this. I'm here for you. And that's how we show up. And in these conversations, we have to learn the language that they're speaking. What is that subtitle that they're talking about? Hopefully these 3 things help you today. I've been here in the city of Downey working with some great leaders and some great staff. And the passion and the intentionality of working with somebody, it's exciting. School's going to start. Educational systems are going to start right now. And so the level is high. But how do we stay intentional and keep it high? Because I guarantee it's going to start to dwindle down and dwindle down and dwindle down and dwindle down. And this is where burnout happens. So we need to be intentional as leaders. And there's these 3 things that can help you start not only the new year, but the work week. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am your host, Juan Alvarado. This is the Relevant Development Podcast. Make sure that you continue to raise that bar to pull yourself up to that next level, but you cannot pull yourself up unless you raise that bar. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll see you on the next episode.